I'm feeling so unstoppable, beating the impossible. Being number one ain't nothing new. Get up off the tracks, it's that choo-choo. Yeah, that J-train coming through. I said that choo-choo. Yeah, that J-train coming through. You know that choo-choo. Yeah, that J-train coming through. It's that J-train coming through. That J-train coming through. But I'm coming for it all. Yeah, me and brother Vinny. I'm a top-notch warrior.
Yo, 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 what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Blood, Sweat, and Banter podcast. We're excited to have you guys back. We're excited to share with you this just a cool story of a friend of ours. We go way back since, I was probably 8 years old when I first met this man. And at the time, even still to this day, he is the man. He has lived countless lives. One of those lives people never even get to enjoy of their own, but yet he's done it on several different levels, several high stages, still impacting the community very positively. So for it's your boy Justin J Train, Vinny Headlock, we want to introduce Ron H2O Man Waterman.
Wow, thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here. It's a lot of fun.
Man, thanks for being here, man. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot of different things going on, which we're gonna share with the world. So, shoot, Vin, you wanna start us off from where do we start?
I mean, I think let's just keep it local. Let's start just how we know Ron and everything. I mean, Ron has two boys that grew up wrestling with us in Greeley, and I mean, when we were growing up, they looked like freaking men. I'm sitting here as like a little chubby kid, and I'm just like, he's tall. How old are you? I'm 8. So, good friends with his kids, Austin, Justin, and I would always see you at the tournaments, and I'm just like, that guy's scary. Who's that? And then you were just the sweetest guy to everyone, and it was so cool seeing you at things, and yeah, it was just so cool to have you at the tournaments, always, rooting on the boys, giving you a fist bump, and you're just like, break our hand with how freaking huge that thing is. But again, sweetest guy that we've ever known, and always, doesn't matter if we're at wrestling tournaments, Greeley Stampede, Ron's always the guy to stop and take a second, talk to you, ask how you've been. So take pictures, bullshit with you, answer questions, whatever. He's always been that guy. And even going back to the Metro days, I remember I was a little kid, but seeing Ron just being with us, with our crew, I was like, oh, we're here to smash everybody. You don't mess with us. So let's go into it. A little bit about Ron. Man, countless lives, like we were saying. Ron has a very successful MMA career. He has fought for the UFC. He has fought for the WEC, which, just a little side note, correct me if I'm wrong, he was the only super heavyweight champion for WEC? Twice, 2
times. See?
That's right.
He's fought for Pancrase. He's fought for Pride. He has wins over Kevin Randleman via submission, via finish. Let me just point that out. He has competed in the WWE. He has wrestled people with the names of Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista,
Hall of Famer.
Oh, I mean, man, that's just two of them. Currently, Ron, he is a firefighter. He is a pastor. And I mean, man, he's a father. He also has a daughter. We didn't mention that earlier. She's a little bit younger, but I mean, man, you have lived countless lives, and you have been successful in all of them. It's just, man, badass is probably an understatement. And just being able to say that we know you, and it's just cool to have you on, Ron.
Well, thanks, guys.
So
it's been quite a journey. God's blessed me tremendously in all those areas, and man, it goes clear back to, I remember seeing you guys just run around as little kids, man, in the Metro, and I remember Vinny's headlock, man, he'd go out there, and
might have been the only move he had, but he was good at it. And he was killing people with his little headlock. And it's such a tight community, you know, when we go back to Metro and the wrestling. And, you know, we had 3 different schools back there with Northridge and Central and West. But, man, those guys that came up together through that same program through Metro, man, it's a tight bunch, man. And it's so cool to see you guys here today and see the success that you've had in your life now and get to follow you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
I mean, I think it's been really cool too, because it's like growing up from Metro, bleh, I've always been cool with Justin, always been cool with Austin, and we were all having success on the high school level as well. And even though we went to different schools, we were kind of like, all right, man, it's personal crosstown rivals.
Right.
Let's go. But it was fun to watch them go out there. And I was like, damn, Justin is stacked as shit. Justin was probably the buffest high school guy I've ever met. But state title, did he go 2?
Or no, he's wrestled Southern Yon all the time. So he kept running.
Yeah, he was runner up.
But Austin did.
Austin came along and he got 2 in a row.
2 in a row. Okay, my bad, my mistake. But man, it's just fun, just kind of crazy. But let's get into it. You got any stories from high school days of seeing these guys?
Man.
I mean, because you were more Austin's age, I believe.
Yeah, Austin and I were actually same graduating class. But I remember I was reading, I don't know if it was the Post or if it was the Tribune, but it talked Austin, and it had this quote in there because he wrestled a kid. You remember Frisbee? He wrestled with us in Pueblo.
yeah.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I had a decent headlock. Austin's, he'll take your head off, man. I remember in the paper.
Was coming too. It's like,
what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah,
how are you gonna
stop
you
it.
can't stop it, dude.
And in the paper, it said that you told Austin, "Hey, what do you do with a Frisbee? You throw it." And so I was like, that is badass. I love that.
Yeah, and he's getting beat the whole match. Comes back in the 3rd period, and you know, of course, Frisbee knew he had a headlock. This guy's a returning state champion, and sure enough, he just everything he had left just threw that headlock and boom, pin. It was a great moment. It was a great moment.
And then that was his junior
year.
And then he went up to heavyweights the next year. And he's like, I'm gonna beat the bigger, badder guys, prove I'm the bigger, badder. And then he wrestled a kid from Rocky Mountain. You remember Tony Martinez,
Little small guy.
Yeah, and I was like,
Tony was
5 times
tough.
that year.
But like,
He was tough.
it's tough, but it's like weird when you're how tall is Austin?
Austin had to be 6 foot, maybe 6'1".
6'1". 6'1". Tony's like what 5'5", 5'5", 280, and it's just like, and he was still like, I'm gonna kick your ass.
Completely different body styles.
So.
And you guys know if you wrestle some guy 3 or 4 times in a row in one season, it gets harder and harder to beat that
Oh
dude.
man, I've lived it, Ron.
Yeah, it
Trust me. I beat somebody like 5 times in the year and kind of whooped up on him, and then in the finals, didn't go my way. That's my heartbreak.
It's so
story.
hard. So hard.
So, but Ron, for you, I'm curious because like we're talking about the boys, but how did you get started in sport of wrestling, and kind of like what was your success with that? Because that's something that I actually don't know a lot about you, is what you were able to achieve on the mat.
Yeah, you know, I was a kid that got bullied in school, and I had a 4th grade gym teacher that said, you know, you got to come out and try wrestling. And
You got bullied?
I got bullied, man. I was a short little fat kid. Started wrestling in 4th grade and found out, hey, I'm pretty good at this. And just started to see some success. It improved my grades. It kept me in school. It made me popular with, you know, I was nobody. And
when you're good at something, people start liking you.
Exactly.
I know it. I feel you. Go ahead though. Keep telling
So
me.
man,
I like that.
that sport just changed my life. And you know, here I am in 4th grade, and by the time I was in high school, I wasn't the short little fat kid that people made fun of anymore. I was big and jacked, and every spare second I had, I was working out and training and doing push-ups. And so, you know, I was one of the biggest, strongest kids when I was in high school, and never really felt like I reached my potential in high school. I got to state I didn't even place, but ended up getting a scholarship to UNC and wrestling for Larry Harrison up there, and just loved the sport, man. It was keeping me in school and got me all the way through college as a wrestler. Ended up being 4th in the nation, and just lots of, you know, positive things. But again, I never felt like I met my potential. So it kept me hungry. And I think it was all part of God's plan. It's like, man, when I had the opportunity then to go after 10 more years, now I'm a teacher at Greeley West High School, coaching wrestling, coaching my boys. and had, they challenged me after practice one day. They said, there's a big tournament coming to Denver, and the UFC was just starting to get big and popular in those days. You had guys like Mark Coleman and these guys that are great wrestlers that are just dominating the UFC. So I'm like, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to give this a shot. So took them up on their challenge, trained for 3 months, didn't know anything about MMA, just a pure wrestler. Man. I'm just a college wrestler. Trained for 3 months, entered, it was called the Box Route Invitational down in Denver. Okay. It was a tournament style. You had 3 matches in one night, but the kicker was the winner of this tournament was going to get a shot at the UFC. So I'm like, oh man, this is amazing.
Hey, there's some big opportunities.
Right.
And
I had guys, former UFC fighters were in there, Pat Smith and a couple other big names. So anyway, 3 matches one night. I walked through all 3 matches in like 20 seconds and just dominated. John Peretti's the UFC matchmaker. He's the official for all these matches. And as soon as I got into my 3rd match, he's like, I want you to take it easy on this guy. Don't hurt him. So I'm like, whatever you say, dude. So anyway, 20 seconds, the guy taps out and he invites me to the next UFC. So here I go, UFC 20, and I've got 3 fights under my belt, and I'm fighting in the UFC.
Damn, that is wild, because that is what UFC is today.
Right.
It's probably the
polar
opposite of MMA
from what it was back in the day.
Just like he says, you've got to start somewhere. But I wanted to touch on something that you said is like, you were still hungry because you didn't feel like you reached your full potential. Right. Do you think if one of my old coaches told me this, and he's like, maybe things didn't go the way you had planned in college because God has a different plan for you.
That's right.
And he led you to MMA, and funny how that works. So like you said, no previous history of MMA, but just a really good wrestler. You still have goals. You're still driven. Do you think if you would have reached maybe NCAA champion, do you think you would have went on to MMA? Do you think it would have led you somewhere different?
You know what? I think it would have. And I think it was part of God's plan. And there's so many instances of that happen in my life, like where I feel like I didn't get to where I was supposed to be, or something happened that I didn't plan for, and it went a completely different direction. But looking back at it now, I can see like, man, this was God's plan.
This is what he really wanted.
Right. He took me into that fighting environment, and I fought, and I'm in there for like a year and a half as a UFC fighter, flying out to California to get put in the very first UFC video game where they
I remember that
electrodes all over your body, and it was on PlayStation.
You're like doing the
Dreamcast, and you're doing all the moves. It was so cool because I actually, they showed me getting down on a knee and praying before my match, which I always did, and that was part of the video game.
Part of it, yeah.
I thought that was so cool.
Kind of.
It's so cool that they did that. So I'm flying out to California to get put into this very first UFC video game, and sit next to this guy on the plane. And for half the flight out there, I didn't even talk to the guy. And then he starts up a conversation and asks me where I'm going and what I'm doing. And I tell him, like, have you ever thought about wrestling in the World Wrestling Federation? It was actually the WWF thing.
Back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I was a big fan.
I'm like, man, I've always loved it, but I've really never had an opportunity. He goes,
did you say that was the Attitude Era?
It was
shortly before and then went into it.
Yeah, like 2000 was about when this would have been.
It was like right at the tail end of the Attitude Era, and then right before the Ruthless Aggression Era.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm like, now I guess I've always thought it'd be amazing. He goes, well, I'm actually really good friends with Shane McMahon. He goes, let me make a phone call.
Wow.
And he calls Shane. I'm flying out the next week to have a meeting with the WWE in Stamford, Connecticut, in the Titan Towers in the office. So I walk in there, Jim Ross, all these executives, Shane, Stephanie.
You're like, dang.
Right there on the spot, yeah. So they do this little short interview. I'm sitting at the desk, and right there on the spot, they offer me a 4-year contract, a developmental contract to wrestle. And I'm like,
just from sitting next to something, I think that's so cool, man. It's like we said again, man, God's plan.
It was totally God's plan, yeah. And what's amazing is it was probably 6 months before my first UFC fight is when I actually asked the Lord to come into my life. And it's like I did that at the Greeley Wesleyan Church after a service one day, and man, all these doors just start to open in my life. It was just crazy how it all just started to happen after I accepted Christ into my life. So anyway, I get this I have to move from Colorado out to Kentucky to train in this little small place called OVW. And I'm thinking this WWF, this is going to be amazing. This place is going to be
it's got
perfect, high tech. And it's like this little broken down warehouse that's about as big as the room we're in right now. I felt like, and anyway, I walk in the very first day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's these. I'm surrounded by these giants, and I'm looking around, and I see, Big Show standing in the ring, Mark Henry, who they called Sexual Chocolate back in the day, he's standing in there, and then there's a couple other guys. Russ McCall, he was over 7 feet tall, and it was just, I mean, you talk about a big fish in a small pond coming from Greeley to this place, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? But it was amazing. I stayed out there for almost a year doing a small little circuit. And I didn't know any of these guys at the time, but I'm in there, like you said, with Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar. Him and I became pretty good friends. Lived right next door to each other in this apartment complex, and all the other guys. John Cena was a big part of our group, and Batista, and it was kind of like the wrestling. We were all just a tight group, bunch of guys. We're tearing down the ring and setting it up twice a week and doing a little television program out there, and then finally, the day comes after about 6 months that they start calling us up to the main roster.
Wow.
So we start traveling around and doing dark matches, and then finally, after a couple months, they said you can move back home to Greeley. So I moved back in with my family, which was crazy hard to be gone because this is both my boys are wrestling at the time.
Yeah, you want to.
I'm missing their life. I'm out there pursuing my own dreams.
You're providing, and you're.
Yeah, and hopefully
pros and cons for sure.
Exactly. But you hate those missing those times because it was hard. But I come back home, and then I'm flying out of my house in Greeley every week to go to matches, and then you drive to we're having 3 or 4 matches a week, and I thought I'd have a lot more time at home, but man, you're gone all the time.
Me and Vinny, we've had a little mini stint in the WWE world, maybe not WWE. It was our personal homemade video, which we won this competition for. But is that hard on your body?
Oh, it was brutal.
Like, I mean, I know MMA is hard, but you're actually.
I got hurt more in WWE than I did in the UFC.
Really?
By a long shot, because it's not like football or baseball or anything where it's seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a continuous.
And you don't get time off. Like, you get busted up. Like, I can remember one time came off the top ropes, landed on the cement floor, and I got this really bad stone bruise right on my heel. I mean, I couldn't even walk.
And you still got to go.
Like, I got a match tomorrow night, man. What am I going to do? So, you go to the doctor. They stick a big, huge cortisone shot right up through your heel, and you go the next night.
And you just do it. And you see some of those videos of like WWE gone wrong, and it is dangerous. Of like people who aren't athletic enough to lift, and there's things of like trying to take care of the people you're with.
And that's the whole thing is it's not like fighting where you're protecting yourself.
Yeah.
You got to depend on the person that you're going against to protect you.
Like, hey man, we're
he needs to be where he's supposed to be.
Each other, but we're a team here too. We're trying to put on a show. We're trying to, and I mean, shit, man, you got somebody full up over your head. You got the Big Show.
That's right.
Big Show, who's 500 plus pounds, and you're trying to lift this guy up, and he slams you, and he slams you wrong. That could be a career ender,
And it's stuff like that you can see when you look back at it, like all the guys in the WWE that end up dying from overdosing on painkillers and stuff. Because, man, you can get
just because it's such
you got to
a
survive
grind,
to the next night.
You've got to do whatever you can do to try to keep going.
So guys are taking a handful of somas every night after matches to
try to numb the pain.
Exactly.
Like, okay, we got to go again tomorrow, and then they do it again the next day.
And then you'd 8 tomorrow because it didn't work as much. So,
yeah.
And the biggest horror story I remember hearing was like Kurt Angle had like a really bad addiction to pain meds, and it was just his only way of getting through
surviving. Yeah.
And so he's a Hall of Famer in WWE, but then he spent time in TNA with Dixie Carter and those guys, and he got a nickname because he just was like, he was going through a divorce, and he's like, I got to let my actions do the talking. Like, if I can do good enough work in the ring, it doesn't matter if I have this addiction. It's like the addiction is letting people know I'm doing my job right. And he said it was like, I would take like 32 Percocets every morning just to get him to like, okay, I'm going to go work out.
32?
Like 30.
It's ridiculous.
Wow.
You can get up to. And
I take half one of those bad boys. I'm out.
Yeah. And, just that addiction ended up costing him his career for a while.
A while,
He came
yeah, for
back,
sure.
He beat it, which is great for Kurt.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's not an easy thing to come back from.
No.
So
No, but it opens people's eyes up to what people are going through when, you just think that, oh, they're partying too hard or whatever, but this is survival mode for most of these guys.
well, it's interesting too because you hear about you only see the positives for the most part. Nobody really sees that backside. Nobody sees the dark behind the scenes image of like, man, I'm cut, I got broken bones, your heel, and you're still performing. The drugs, the partying, the women, the everything that comes along with it, and
But did being a father, having the Lord in your life make that life a lot easier to manage? Or was it always like the temptation of like, hey, these guys are going out, I got to go out with them, otherwise I'm not with the clique,
Yeah, and there was both sides to that, like, you want to fit in, and as the new guy is, trying to make your way up there, you can't ignore some of that stuff. But the same part, I couldn't sell my soul either.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
you have the good morals, the good ethics, just the way you were raised, and the man you are, which kind of led you to this other path, which we'll get into shortly. But man, it's just
there's a lot of temptation out there, man. And it's like living the life of a rock and roll singer, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's so hard, and I'm throwing into this a brand new believer, and I'm surrounded by all these worldly guys that are out there just partying and eating this up. Yeah.
For lack of better words.
Absolutely. You got girls knocking on your door at 2 a.m.
Like,
and
who the heck are
there's
you?
a line. I mean, it's just like, it's
I saw you
terrible.
down at the bar and I watched you come up here like, dude, what the heck?
Yeah, it's a scary world. And I survived in that for about a year and a half. And then I knew
wasn't for you.
I couldn't do this anymore, man.
I mean, still, just the stint and the people you've encountered and the things you've done with it.
And that's another one of those things, you said that kind of like the same thing as I didn't reach my own potential, so I wanted more. God totally put me in this. And I think all he did it for was to create a platform so I could be, a better representative for him. So I'm in the WWE for a couple of years. I meet this guy in the WWE that used to travel with this group called the Power Team back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. That's
guys that are blowing up hot water bottles and ripping phone books and breaking bricks and all that stuff. And so I'm like, dude, tell me about this group that you used to travel with. And so he gives me a phone number, and he said it's changed from the Power Team to Team Impact. But he goes, you got to get a hold of these guys. So I've been released for like 6 months from WWF.
They were kind of a religious group too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
they were so
that's what it is.
And they do these amazing feats of like, I think I remember watching one where the guy squatted like, man, I want to say it was like 900 pounds or something, 1,000 pounds. I can't remember exactly because it was so long. But just various cool, I think.
Folding up a frying pan.
Yeah.
So I make send an email because I'm too afraid to call these guys on the phone. But he gets the email and immediately calls me back on the phone and sets up an interview. So I fly out to Coppell, Texas to meet with this guy, and they take me out to dinner, and they put me on my first trip with these guys. And again, it was almost like that first day in WWF. Just a bunch of monsters are out there.
Yeah.
World strongman competitors, NFL football players, professional bodybuilders, and just animals. But immediately it's like, these guys are night and day different from the guys that I've been traveling with for the last 2 years.
A different type of beast with bright morals, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, so it's a Christian organization. What these guys would do is during the day, they would do these school assemblies, and they would talk to the kids about making good choices and anti-drug, anti-alcohol, and purity, and all kinds of amazing goal setting and all this stuff that they would share. And then at nighttime, we would do a bigger program where we could actually share our testimonies and our faith, and we would see hundreds and thousands of people accept Christ as their Savior. And so I was like,
I love it.
This is where God wants me, man. This is where
more your style.
This is where He wants me to be. And so, and I'm still getting great exposure. I get to talk in front of people, but I felt such a peace inside knowing that I'm doing this for the right reasons now. It's not all about me. This is about where God wants me and how He can use me.
I love it because I'm such a big believer of, coming from Greeley's not the biggest city. It's still a city. There's a lot smaller. But I mean, what are we? Maybe 300,000 people now,
Yeah,
and it's
about-
grown drastically over the last 10 years.
For sure.
But it's just such of like small town,
humble
but
beginnings.
humble beginnings. But the things you've reached and the countless lives you have touched in the right way, and there's some. How do I want to say it? Like some of these guys, like maybe Ric Flair would probably be a good example of legend of the sport. I still huge fan of the guy, love the guy, but it's hard to be like, is he the good role model? He
Right.
tries now, but now that he's like 70. But
Well-
I'm like, dude, you could have probably done some things a little different back in the day and really made a difference in the right way.
Right.
But it's there's got to be the good with the bad, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know.
The big problem with Ric Flair was like, so he just couldn't stop being Ric Flair. He's not Ric Flair. His actual he was living it, and he just like.
That's
Did you ever
just who he is now. Well, I mean,
did you ever watch his 30 for 30?
I watched a little bit.
Like just something brutally honest
Which
the
was-
whole
it was
time.
really cool.
But it's like you're watching that and you're like, wow, that's so cool. But I'm also like, you're not the nicest guy, man. Like you didn't hang out with your kids. Like he said, how many? The interview asked him, it's like, how long were you faithful with your wife? He's like, a day. And I was like, he was like, I got bored. It's just like it wasn't fun anymore. I was,
Right.
and so if it wasn't for wrestling, like so he's kind of the, again, as a wrestler, so much personality, charisma,
great
you know.
it's great for the sport.
But-
for sure.
Then you think about like, hey, who are you when you go to bed at night? Because you can't be Ric Flair. You can't be these higher than life people. Like you're just back to the person that God put you on this earth to be. And if you're not happy with that, you got to make changes.
And what's sad, Vinny, is so many people out there watching that don't know the difference.
They don't.
Exactly.
They don't.
And so, like you said, when you go to bed tonight, what's the example that you're setting for these kids that are
Mhm.
watching you? And
Because they're the ones that
how are you
seeing
being
it.
remembered? Yeah.
And so, I think it's interesting now because I'm going back to like WWE a little bit, but it's like nowadays there's this huge shift where kayfabe isn't really a thing anymore. Like you kind of go into the wrestling knowing it's pre-rehearsed, but it's kind of just like dancing. It's like like you're not going to go to the movies and be like, what? Captain America didn't save the world? What? I don't even like this movie anymore. But so wrestling's starting to take that where they can just be themselves. And I think
Yeah. Over the years, it's definitely been exposed more and more. Yeah, the whole kayfabe was a huge deal when I was in there. Like, there's no way you're going to go out to eat that night with a heel if you're a face. And
Yeah.
'cause you're not seen together, or you're done. You lose your job.
You can't because
No.
it would ruin the whole story.
Exactly.
And that's what I think a lot of people really like is the story of they want it to be. It is real. You still get slammed. You still get beat up. So there is a lot of real, but predetermined, I guess, prescriptive.
it's pretty. I mean, hey, are you actually jumping off a 20-foot ladder onto top of something?
Yep,
Yes, you are.
absolutely. You're still
Hey,
taking-
that's real, man. You
Yeah.
can't fake that.
Yeah,
But
it's
there
like,
was-
oh, that's a fake ladder. How do you make a fake ladder? Like, so I guess, and for you, like, what were some of your favorite matches in your time with WWE? I know you had dark matches with Jeff Hardy. I know you tag teamed with Brock all the time. Did you ever go head to head with Brock?
I did.
Okay, so I
watched the
mean,
one with Randy Orton.
Yeah, I
And-
had a lot of matches with Randy.
and so, and then just different personalities. You said Jim Ross. I know Jim Cornette was there at the time.
Yeah.
So, like, who were the people that
Favorite
really
matches, maybe who are your favorite people
just-
that you've encountered? Do you still keep in touch with some of these guys from the WWE?
Brock's about the only one that I really stay in touch with now. He still comes out to my house and Berthoud. His daughter's going to CSU.
CSU,
yeah,
national
she's
champ.
just killing it.
She's
Yeah.
a national
She
champion.
looks just like
It
him.
looks just like him.
Right? Her legs are bigger than mine are. But I was one of those guys that Brock, I don't know, we just kind of had something in common. Oh, we were both wrestlers,
I think
right?
you have
So,
very similar
lot of
lives.
things
MMA,
in common, yeah.
wrestling, big guy. WWE.
but he's not
is-
we have a couple opposites too. Like, he is definitely not a people person. He
He-
doesn't like
he's-
people.
He's I don't want to say he's socially awkward, but he is socially kind of awkward. Like he just doesn't. He's like,
doesn't
I'd
enjoy
rather
being around
I say
people.
hi, but
Yeah.
don't come up and try to talk to me.
And that would happen all the time. We go out to eat after matches and stuff, and
I mean, he's such a big
people are
face.
coming up to you, like, wanting to talk to you, wanting their pictures with you. And Brock was just, he'd turn and growl at him. And I was like,
But it kind of worked for him with the kayfabe at the time, because it's like
yeah,
he was this,
that's
you
who
know,
he was.
beast, and you're just like, oh, don't go up to him, dude. He put the Big Show through an F5 on the table. You don't want to mess with this guy. Let him eat his meal. So,
Right.
but I think that's cool though, because like it's that side that you're saying, like, hey, it's like he has his favorite people, and he will open up to you guys the most.
And Brock was actually saved in college as well through Athletes in Action.
Oh,
when he was in
really?
college. So yeah, so
I did not know he was a part of that.
Yeah, so we had that in common, which was.
Did you know him in
huge.
college at all? You guys
I
are probably
didn't. I didn't meet
similar,
him until the
but-
day he walked into OVW.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and met him.
Damn.
We just kind of hit it off, and we've been close ever since. But he's one of the guys that I still keep in touch with, but very few of them anymore. I mean, I hear like John Cena will mention me on podcasts all the time now still, and some of the guys, but he's really the only one that I keep in touch with now. But it's like anything else. You spend night after night in these different cities and different arenas, and they just all start to blend together.
Yeah,
After a while, you don't even know where you're at. And match after match. But yeah, some of my big matches, like Jeff Hardy was a huge one. And I remember that one in North Carolina. And that was the night that Ric Flair came back to the WWE. So it was kind of a big deal. And, just the getting to, before every night we would set up, we'd get to practice in the ring and getting to roll around and talk, like rolling around with Kurt Angle and messing around with The Undertaker. And
we met The Undertaker
and The
very
Rock.
briefly one day.
Well,
Did you?
Well, Dad,
Yeah,
I never met
Dad
him.
did not.
Our,
We were at the same hotel. I thought I
it
saw
was
him
Vegas,
walk by,
wasn't it?
but I wasn't sure, and I was like, I think that's him. But my dad was in the elevator.
he just kind of pulls this. And he's like,
Right.
Are you The Undertaker?
and he's just on the third one. He's like, it's me.
Yeah.
He's like, oh man, my kids love you. Hold on a second. He's like, I'm out of here, dude. I gotta go.
And back then, Taker was the man.
Oh,
You walk into the locker room, and he's the king of the locker room. Like everybody respected. Yep, everybody respected him. And the first thing you do when you walk in, especially as a new guy, is you shake everybody's hand. And I made the mistake walking in and you shake my hand, and I give him this. Oh, shooter, step back, because it's a light touch. So this is a wrestler's handshake.
just because you think it could hurt.
Well, they want you to have a light touch, and that's how they want you to work with them in the ring.
Okay.
You give them that tight grip, and I'm like, whoa, like this guy's gonna,
Like, oh no.
this guy's gonna hurt me. Yeah, so they don't want you to.
What was he like? Did you get to interact with
Oh,
him a
yeah,
lot?
all the
Was
time.
It seems to me like he is a pretty down to earth person. He has the things that he likes. He is a family man. He
Yeah.
takes care of good morals, good ethics,
And a new believer.
and a new belief.
Just gave his life to the Lord.
I think I saw this on X somewhere. I think
Yeah.
formerly Twitter. But either way, regardless, because he had the persona of like.
His character was tight, dude. He took the business so seriously. But now that he's like done and he's retired, like he's actually opening up, and you tell like he's kind of a goober. Like he's kind of a nerd in his own way with certain things. But I don't know if I'd ever call him a nerd because so let me take that back, because he's arguably one of the GOATs maybe for WWE.
absolutely. So much respect, man. That dude is in so much pain. He's kind of like Stone Cold Steve Austin, just beat up, and dude, every night he's out there
Still going for years, man.
And that was when I was in there in 2000, and 20 years later I still see him in there. I'm like,
Hey, damn,
oh my
dude.
gosh, how are you
doing
still
this?
moving? Yeah.
So now I hope you don't mind. I want to go back to your MMA days, because you spent time. You had your UFC debut,
Yep.
and
after you did
it
go
was
back to MMA.
then
right?
he went back to
Yeah.
MMA. So Pancrase, that was exclusively in Japan?
Mm-hmm.
So, and Pride obviously in
Pride was
Japan.
mostly Japan, I
So
thought.
being in Japan, how much different was the culture out there versus the American fan? Because I know, if you watch any of the UFC shows nowadays, if you get a boring fight, you'll just hear people in the crowd go, woo! And they're just showing their displeasure. But I hear the Japanese fans are a lot more
So
respectful.
different. Yeah.
So-
It's night and day different. And I didn't know. I expected the same thing when I go over there and thought, obviously, Pancrase is a lot different than Pride. Pride's a huge production.
Yeah.
But, I'm in the middle of my match, and you could hear a pin drop in there.
Really, 'cause
they're just so, they respect the martial art piece of it so much. And you do something that's impressive, and all of a sudden
they
you hear
clap.
this little golfers
Like,
clap.
wow.
Yeah. But you don't have people that are, standing up screaming with their beer bottles in their hand, just wanting
American
blood and
culture.
wanting, stand them up. It's like, but they just respect the sport. And it was like that the whole time I was over there for 15 years plus fighting over there.
Was it hard to get around in Japan? Like, I would assume the language barrier would be a big one because, when I've traveled to Italy, lucky for us, a lot of them spoke English.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the signs were pretty easy to get around and stuff. But in Japan, there's like symbols and the language is completely. I'm like, dang, I just feel like that would be a chore in itself. But I would assume if you're with a big promotion, they kind of have a guide.
And that was the thing. You had an interpreter with you the whole time and somebody helping you get to places. But if I was over there on my own, oh man.
Oh,
like we take so much for granted here, being American, but just think even if you were a person that only knew Japanese and you came to America, it would still be hard.
It'd still be
to
hard,
understand.
yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not like we have people that speak Japanese that can translate.
Not a lot, anyways. I just feel like every single fighter that I have talked to who has fought or has spent some time in Japan has said the same thing, that they're very welcoming people and they are very just fans of martial arts. And it's not just like this American culture, like you said. We want to see blood. We want to see you knock somebody out. We want to just see
you're going to get booed if you're not doing what they expect you to do.
They're like, hey, we appreciate jiu-jitsu. Yeah. We appreciate Muay Thai and striking and wrestling, because we know that, dude, that's a skill and it's an art in itself. And
it was so cool. They literally roll out the red carpet, especially for big American fighters.
Yeah.
You're like their sumo wrestlers. That's how they treat you over there, which is a big deal.
Well, and I guess you're familiar with Bob Sapp.
Oh yeah.
So he was at least in terms of MMA, they looked at him like this superstar, and it's like, how much of that did you come in contact with? I remember he did some really corny commercials for stuff like that. But you had several fights in Pancrase, several fights in Pride that I think you got at least enough of a fan base that knows oh yeah, H2O man, what's up? So
I felt like for a long time that I was more popular in Japan than I was in the United States by a long shot.
Really
walking down the street, getting through the airports out there. And
I feel like you being in Japan, you're a huge individual.
Yeah, you're already a foot over the crowd.
You're going to stand out.
Right? And you're Ron Water, you're H2O man. So, and as big of fans they are, they probably loved you over there. They probably ate you up just like, dude, please, we just...
The only place I had an action figure was in Japan.
That's dope. Do you still have one?
I never got one.
Oh man, that thing's probably buku if you could find it.
That's
look
cool,
for it.
Hey,
look for it. They would come up to you and they would have pictures of you, and they want you to sign the pictures for them ahead of time. And it was,
goals
it was
to have one, be in a video game. 2, have an action figure. Hey, dude, that's pretty badass in my eyes.
Yeah.
So now. So Pancrase, OG promotion, but you said Pride was a bigger spectacle, and arguably Pride was even bigger than the UFC for a long time. So
especially at those times, I would say it definitely was.
So with how does preparing for going out on a WWE show, you got to do your entrance there and get ready to perform in front of a few thousand people, to the Tokyo Dome, the Saitama 40,000
arena.
Yeah, how does that planning, how does that prep look? Because obviously, you're going out for a legitimate fight versus one that's predetermined. How do you get your mind right for something like that, especially against guys like Randleman and Crow Cop? What was that like for you?
That part of it can go clear back to wrestling, because I was always one of those guys that, I'm going to prepare as hard as I can, and I don't care if I'm fighting in the Budweiser Event Center or if I'm in the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter who it's against. There's not a doubt in my mind that I can't win that fight, and that nobody's going to work as hard as I did to prepare for that fight. And even back then, when most of the fighters weren't full-time fighters, I was a teacher at Greeley West High School, teaching all day long, and I'd go to Denver every single night for 3 hours and trained with Nate Marquardt and a whole bunch of guys. And
Did you train at Stars?
I did
That's
train at Stars,
okay.
yeah.
I remembered.
That's
I
where I
got to
got my
check it
black
out
belt,
before
yeah.
they shortly were done. But that was, and there was a lot of high level guys there. That was
Dwayne Ludwig was
for
fighting
this
out of there.
kind of a small little spot,
Yep.
but
Who was
produced some fucking studs.
Because who was running that gym at the time? Like who were the coaches?
I'm trying to think of the guy's name now.
Oh man,
Super good guy.
Mike
It was a while
took
back.
us in there, and he's like, "This is one of our younger wrestlers. I think I was in high school, maybe 8th grade at the time." And he's like, "Do you want to learn about MMA?
Yeah.
Come and train with the." And these guys, they didn't mess around, man. They went hard in
Yeah, it
that
was a-
gym. I
it
was
was
like,
a crazy
holy
gym, but,
cow, man!
yeah.
They were throwing people into walls, pushing them over the weights, and I was like,
Yeah.
And is that where you trained going into that Boss Root and Invitational?
It
So it
was.
was around then.
It was a little after that because
Okay.
when I was fighting in the UFC, I was just scrounging up guys to go practice at Greeley West Gym
I remember
fighting
that too. I've
bodies
been
just
there
to-
sometimes watching
to
I was
come
like,
help me. Like, I'd find as many big guys as I
big.
could to come and train with me. But it's not like I had a camp back then in the day. I'm just
trying to figure
I'm
it
just
out.
doing everything I can to get in crazy good
Uh-huh.
shape. And being a wrestler, I mean, we knew how to get in shape.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It was different too, though, because this isn't a 7-minute match. This is a
This- it
15-minute
could
match,
be-
and I 260 pounds.
That's
I
a
can't.
long time to. Move
I
around
can't
as
train
big
like
guy.
a 7-minute match wrestler. So I had to learn. And as you know, like I'm not going to my back, man. There's no way.
Hell no.
So fighting out of my guard wasn't even an option. I'm like, I'm gonna be on top.
of you,
That's right.
and I'm gonna smother you, and eventually you're just gonna get so tired, or I'm gonna strangle you, or put you in Americana or something.
That's right.
Well, if I saw Ron throw up a go-go plot, I would lose my mind. I'm just like, because I'm used to just seeing the heavy hands on top, boom, boom,
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
boom,
ground and pounded, man.
and so yeah, like that was how do I explain this? Like it was hard whenever we started trying jujitsu, and just you can attest, like I haven't stayed in jujitsu enough to get a belt, and I just love practicing, but
It's so fun.
whenever you are introduced to it as a wrestler, it's so funny because you're just like, all right, now you're gonna lay on your back, and this guy's gonna get on top. No, he's not.
Wait a minute.
No,
No.
absolutely not.
No, it's like, no, this is okay. You're
My whole
fine.
life
here.
I've trained not to be on my back.
And now you're telling me to do it on purpose?
Mm.
No way, man. That
Yeah.
was one of the hardest things. I still don't like being on my
I'm the
back.
same way.
It's just,
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's just our nature.
Yeah.
Well, because when you do jujitsu and you see these guys now that like, and they're finding a way to make money just doing jujitsu now. There's a kid that just got signed exclusively to the UFC, Mikey.
Musumeci.
Yeah.
Musumeci.
And he looks like a dweeb, but he takes off his shirt and he's like,
Oh, this guy's
and I'm
yoked.
like, and you're making 6 figures every year with this? But
Good for
yeah,
them,
like
man. Good for them.
whenever I just don't know how, and they want to go to their back and they go to their butt and they're like, come on, Bran, let's go. I'm going to rip your knee out of its socket. And I just don't understand. Like as wrestlers, it's like, no, I want to be on top. I want to put you on your back. I want to put you in an uncomfortable position and then I'll leave. Like that's it. Right.
It's a tough transition for sure.
So
What during Pride, I mean, being a star in Japan, man, I will be the first to say that was one of my favorite fights of yours, Ron. Was whenever you submitted Kevin Randleman. I mean, like we talked a little bit before, you were a huge underdog in that fight, and us. I was like, hey man, I know Kevin Randleman's a bad dude, but I know Ron's a bad dude, so I didn't expect you to submit him. No way did I expect that. But the fact that you did against such he's a legend of the sport. And
Hall of Famer now.
Hall of Famer now, yeah, absolutely.
you know, he's
And,
rest in peace to
That's
him.
right.
R.I.P., yes.
That's right.
I mean, you fought Crow Cop, who also legend of the sport, probably a Hall of Famer at some
Yeah,
point.
and
You know?
For sure.
But and you fought him in it like the prime
In
of his career. Prime
yeah,
Pro
he
Cop,
was.
'cause arguably when he went to the UFC, like it was like, all right, I'm kind of on my way. He wanted to fight for the belt, but you fought him in Pride, home, like not necessarily in Croatia, obviously, but like home field because he was just the biggest thing since sliced bread.
He probably wasn't
He
his peak
just-
about then too, man.
He was
see,
at that time,
untouchable
like
at that time.
scary.
Him and Fedor, yeah.
What was it? It was left kick hospital, right kick
kick
cemetery. I'm like, oh gosh.
And you couldn't see either one of them coming, man.
But you took him down, like you had your moments in that fight. So it's like
Yeah.
going into that, did you look at that like, hey, this is my Super Bowl going against Crow Cop, or was it just another day
I
in
didn't.
the office?
It was just another day in the office for me. I didn't know him any more than I knew anybody else that I was going to fight. And I'm like, let him try to stop my takedown. Let him try to stop me getting into side mount and grabbing an arm. And that was my mentality. And, I found out pretty fast that he was hard to keep down on the ground. And then catching that kick, like
that's the last thing you want.
Right, exactly. And then getting soccer kicked. And
well, and the rules were different then, dude. You could straight up
soccer kick somebody on the ground.
Stomp him on the face while he's on the ground.
And we had to agree before the fight, if they want to allow elbows on the ground.
Oh, really?
To the head. And so, of course, we're always going to say yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
As a wrestler, I'm like, hell yeah, I am, dude.
Absolutely.
I want it. That's one of my biggest probably tools.
But that fight with Kevin, just walking out, they had this 40,000 people there. You walk out to this huge wall that's all a drum wall. And it was just such a crazy feeling. But it's like any fight, we don't focus on that stuff. We're focused on our opponent, So
there's
you don't even remember that walk to the ring. You don't remember any of the pre-match stuff. It's all just.
That's one of my favorite things I try to explain to people is like that walk.
You're in the zone, man.
It's such a feeling that some people will never get to experience. The lights are shining, they're screaming, and you're like the nerves, but the excitement and just the mesh of all these different feelings is such a rush, man. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
Who do you think was your probably the biggest opponent you fought? I kind of want to say Crow Cop because at the time, but I mean, maybe randomly. I mean, you fought a lot of.
It was probably between those two. I mean, I fought Rico Rodriguez was the UFC champion.
You fought him twice.
But I fought him twice. Yeah, beat him the first time, and Tito Ortiz was his corner man that time. Actually, both times. So those were both big wins for me and fun.
You fought Rico, I know, in the WFA. Was in WEC?
Yeah,
then the second time you fought him, it was not in the WEC.
No.
So that was WFA, I think, or was it Strike Force?
The Strike Force.
It was Strike Force.
In California. Yeah.
See, he fought in Strike Force too, man. Like when you go all over the place, Roger Gracie, you fought him.
Roger, yeah.
So
there's another big. I forgot about that one.
Well, and that one was with Bodog. Wasn't that the one that was like outdoors? They kind of had it like by a beach. Wasn't that where you had one of fights like that, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that's got to be a shift from, again, like, indoors, even if it's like 1,000-seat arena to 40,000, UFC to, man, it's like 90 degrees outside. Why are we fighting here? So, but to transition from that and everything, we were at your, did you know it was going to be your retirement fight when you signed up to fight close to home?
No, not necessarily.
Because I was looking at it, I was like, you fought pretty regularly going into that one. And I believe me, like, as a kid, I was just stoked because I never actually saw you fight. YouTube wasn't a thing.
Right.
And,
pay-per-view, you had to pay for it.
Exactly. And if my dad found out, it's like, what are you doing? I was like, I got the illegal cable box. I'm watching Ron fight. Yeah. It just wasn't so that was a special day for us. But, man, so what was the straw that broke the camel's back to be like, you know what, I'm not going to get another fight after this one?
Josh, at the time I was probably 45 years old when I had that fight, and it was pretty old for fighters, I would say.
Yeah.
But I had such a late start that, I still felt good, but it was just getting so hard to recover after fights, and just the amount of, when you get hurt is in practice before, it's not during your fight, but and just the wear and tear. And then after, doing it for 15 years and wrestling and everything, I knew it was time, and I just wasn't at my peak like I want to be when I perform. I don't want to do anything halfway. So I knew it was getting close to time, and unfortunately, we're still money motivated. So when people throw big numbers at you, you're like, I guess it's going to be a walk in the park anyway. I'm going to finish this in the first period, so why not take it? So that was kind of probably my mentality going into that fight.
Gotcha.
It's the same thing of, like I said with WWE, is like people usually only see fighters when they're fighting.
Exactly.
And they only see what the promotion kind of wants you to see. And they don't see, man, those countless hours of training, injuries. There's a lot that goes into it, and how the sport has evolved so much. and even mindsets. Like some people don't even spar anymore for their camps.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like, I like to run as a cardio, but I hate running. So it's like some people swim, some people bike, and just all the differences of like, you got to be strong, you got to be fast, you got to be agile, you got to know technique, you got to be train so hard that you can get the absolute most out of yourself. But at the same time, you don't want to overtrain and get injured. You don't want to overtrain and end up hurting yourself, hurting your performance. Sure. So it's such so much that goes into it. The recovery, just mental.
The mental piece of it's 90%, as you know. Just being prepared in your head for the fight is half the battle.
Like by the time I fight, I've walked through the fight
100,000
I'd say
times.
100,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude. Like I sit up at night just like in my own just thinking, and my fiance is like, "Dude, go to bed." It's like I can't
shut this off.
I'm trying to, but I can't. But
she's laying in bed ready, like, oh, what a good day. And Justin's, meanwhile, he's like, I'm in Chicago. I'm fighting this guy. What did I do wrong? What I got? It's like, you got those things. Like, and I get it with wrestling, is that they're always just like one thing that just sticks in the back of your mind.
And unfortunately, it's not the wins, it's the losses.
No, it's
that are
oh my gosh.
Right?
I have this super funny story. So last year we're at the state tournament. I'm with Trusty, Charrington, and our assistant coaches. And so Charrington and I, we're downstairs, we're having a drink. We just finished the first day of state. And they said, hey, Trusty's got some drinks up in his room. Like, let's go up there and, just say what's up. And we go up there, and me, all the other coaches, Trusty's in his bed, kind of rolls over, looks at me and goes, fuck you. And I was like, what did I do? And he's like, you were supposed to win me a state championship. I was like, that was like 12 years ago, man. What do you? And I was like, but my point with that was like, he still thinks about that one match. I was like, dang, wow. It's like,
trying to forget about that one.
I was like, oh, thanks for reminding me.
Right?
Because
just brought me back there.
Because it's not like every year when we come here to coach, I don't think about it all the time.
Right.
So, and after fighting was done, and obviously, I guess you don't have to answer this, but at least just say like a yes or a no. With your pioneer and veteran status with fighting and with WWE, was fighting at the time when you were fighting a viable, like something that you were able to do just by itself, or were you like, hey, I had to do this on the side, like I had to, because I know you would like teach. You would teach, you were teaching. I know you would come to our school, and I would always like nudge Austin, like, it's your dad. I was like, yeah, I see him every day. I was like, no, dude, he's picking up like 4 little girls at once. Like, is that not badass? I was like, I've seen it, dude. Come on.
Seen it every day.
Show us something new.
But so,
I mean, the money was, I had some, a few fights that were really good, especially for back then. Heavyweights always got paid better than the little guys did, which was,
people want to see them.
They want to see big guys out there banging, right? But I was always a person that had other jobs that I did, and it was always just I would still train hard, but I always had other jobs that I needed to support myself. I think I never had the option, I thought at the time, where I could say, aside from WWE, I never had the option of saying, I'm just going to be a full-time fighter and do that. So one thing kind of led to another. When I was traveling with that strength team, Team Impact, I did that for full-time for about 5 years. And then that kind of fell off, and I started my own real estate company, and I'm still doing that today as well.
I remember seeing the signs all over.
Yeah.
I was like,
it was on 34 right over there by St. Michael's. I saw the sign.
The big one that I would always see.
I always saw that one.
Yeah, I just sold that property a couple of years ago. They're building a bunch of apartments there now.
Really? Huh. Well,
and then that kind of led into fire a few years later, and now I've been a firefighter for the last about 12 years now. Do that full time, and then just being a piece of ministry, I started attending when we moved to Berthoud. Started attending the church over there called Grace Place, and one day after one of our Bible studies, the pastor came up to me and said, "Hey, our youth pastor is kind of leaving abruptly, and we'd love to have you in that position if you'll take it." So prayed about it, and so I've been the youth pastor there now for the last year and a half.
Dang, how's that going?
Kids.
what is
What's a day-to-day like?
what is the day-to-day of a pastor? I'm curious.
Yeah, there's so much more to it than people, you think you just see them up there, preaching on Sunday mornings, but
That's what they think is it only is. There's so much
more
that I
to
would
it. Yeah,
assume.
and I've got, close to 100 kids in the program and 40
Wow.
leaders underneath me. So, we have our services on Sunday nights at 5:00 where I have the kids and I get to share a message with them every Sunday night.
Mhm.
But you're still as a pastor, you still have a lot of responsibilities at the church. I have, people come in every week that, I'm basically doing counseling sessions with them at times and then running like summer camps and winter camps for the kids. And there's just, I do a mission trip with the high school kids over in Mexico every summer. And
Dang, that's cool.
there's just so many other pieces of it that are very demanding. So Monday through Thursday, I'm at the church when I'm not on shift at the fire department from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. Sundays is pretty much an all day.
Yeah, I'm sure you run several services, and there's just, there's things that need to get set up. I'm sure there's, behind the scenes, like we said, sound, videos. If you guys do that, microphones got to be insane.
Oh yeah, we've got a full-time IT guy that does an amazing job.
There's more. And then plus planning a trip overseas with a bunch of younger kids.
Right, there's just a lot.
Probably a little chaotic.
Yeah. I have a full-time assistant, so that makes it a little bit easier on me. Take a little bit of that load off of my back for sure. But it's been amazing. It's good. I feel like this is where God wants me to be, and He's used all those things in my past to help set me up for where I am today. Yeah.
I used to coach. I coached at the high school in Berthoud. This was years ago. I was still in school. I was doing my student teaching, so I was doing my student teaching and coaching, and even from then, man. Berthoud has grown. I really like Berthoud. It's a smaller city, kind of out there in the country, a lot of space, a lot of, but the people there are very nice and very welcoming and very, a smaller city when you're in one, and just the way the people are with their own is like, it's, but tough. They produced several state champs out of there. Just a fun community to be around. And I would feel like even being a part of the church out there, you could probably run into it a little bit different than just the wrestling. I was just around the high school, know, and then being a firefighter out there, I'm sure you're a face around the community. I'm sure you already were from all these other lives that you have had success with. How do you like living out there?
I love it. We bought a 10-acre little plot out there west of town, right on the foothills. My daughter's gotten into competing on horseback, so she does equestrian riding now. So we've got a couple of horses and 10 acres.
Are they on your property? I assume you probably got a little plot for them specifically.
Yeah, I got a big draft horse for me to ride. So.
Oh man, that's good.
But it's a lot of fun. It's a great community to be in. I love it out there.
Horses are pretty interesting animals because people think they're kind of just a wild animal. No, dude, horses are incredibly smart.
They've got personalities.
They do have personalities, and they can be used as a tool. They can be a pet, but man, they could protect you. I'd feel safe if I was out in the woods riding a horse. They could probably handle off a mountain lion. They could give you one kick, man. That's game over.
So what I was wondering though is because I remember I think I found out that you were a firefighter when the calendar came out, and I was like, Vinny, why you? Hey man, hey, I'm supporting Ron, all right. There's nothing weird here. But so what was it like? Because it kind of seems like we've heard it throughout the whole show so far. It was like God putting you in that right position, but it was like, how did it go from how did you get introduced to wanting to get into that profession?
It's kind of interesting because I was my older son Justin was a senior, and I was like, Justin, I think this would be a great career for you. I think you should do this. So we started looking into it, and I visited a couple of different fire departments and looked at what it would take. And the more I learned about it, I'm like, man, this is something I think I would enjoy. I would liking this. It's almost like an extension of the locker room. We're so used to hanging around our boys and getting tight with them, and just all the camaraderie. And man, that's the firehouse.
That's I've been friends with some other firefighters, and I went and met some guys down a ride along, and it's just like that is the life that just fits, I think, enough. Like you said, in the locker room of the camaraderie of you guys are bros, but you handle business,
Yeah.
but you guys are friends, you guys are co-workers, and it's probably just fun to be around similar like-minded people.
Sure. And there's so many different pieces of it. One is that camaraderie that you have, but the other one is the professional piece of it. And man, you don't know what you're going to get when those calls come across. And we're an ambulance and a fire station, so we run both calls.
Oh wow.
And we could have a blazing fire that we get toned out to, or we could have a little 80-year-old lady that needs help getting out of the bathtub. You don't know what kind of call you're gonna get. So just that adrenaline and excitement.
I feel like
you still get that.
Somebody like us who have fought and who have traveled, and you've probably seen a lot of things that a lot of people haven't. Do you feel like you kind of need that, like just I want to say like a purpose still, maybe.
Yeah, just being able to help people is a huge piece for me of where I think like you said, like where God wants me. And I have a servant's heart, and that's a huge part of the job that I have now in both in ministry and at the fire department.
Uh-huh.
So, I get to help people, and I get to see people on their worst day and try to make it better,
Probably very rewarding, I would think. I'm sure
absolutely is, yeah.
I'm sure being both the ambulance and the firefighters, you probably see some things that you don't want to see. And I'm sure that's probably the hard part of the job, I would assume.
Yeah, especially when you have run calls on kids that are your kids' ages, and especially the little ones, and seeing that you can't unsee a lot of that stuff. So just being able to, what's cool is I'm one of the people on our peer support team now, so just being able to talk with the guys about calls and stuff after that and get it out. And back in the day, guys, I'm a firefighter, I'm too tough, I don't need this, I'll go drink a few beers and forget about it. But it just builds up, and that cup gets full, and at some point it's going to overflow, right?
Absolutely.
But now we've got healthy ways to get rid of that stuff,
kind of communicate it,
compartmentalize that bad stuff. Yep.
Wow. What from living this crazy life of being a professional fighter, being a professional wrestler, being a pastor, and was it hard to transition, I guess, into being a pastor of like maybe a more normalized job, or a firefighter, which is kind of a more normalized job? Both of those are kind of the outliers, maybe very different from your traditional desk job or a labor job. I mean, firefighting, maybe a labor job. I don't know if it classifies that, but I'm sure it was very hard to make that transition and such a different lifestyle. But I don't know. Tell us about that transition.
I'd be lying to you if I said that it was easy to make that transition, but I think that's one of the things that God does, is he makes you realize that this life isn't about yourself. You're not here just so you can have success and that you can be in the limelight, that you can make a lot of money and live in a nice house and drive a nice car.
Yeah.
And there was a period of my life that, man, I wanted all those things.
Absolutely.
I wanted that fame. I wanted that money. I wanted that big house. And so getting taken out of that environment, I think, is exactly what God did for me. And he opened my eyes and said, you know what? Step back for a minute. This isn't about you. This is about what I can do through you, and letting God work through me now. Made that transition just way easier. It's like, man, I just want to help people now. I just want to do what you've given me the tools to do, the platform that you've given me. And man, let me use that to bless other people.
I love it, because he's talking to you, and being a religious man myself, Vinny.
I just had breakfast with your pastor.
Oh, Angel?
Yesterday, yeah.
Pastor of disaster.
He's awesome, man. I love Angel. Mosaic Church, man.
That's
unreal.
That's where me and my fiance go.
I would tell anybody to go check out that church, because that dude's amazing.
Angel is I've known them for a long time, and Angel is
jiu-jitsu guy too.
Yeah, that's why we call him the Pastor of Disaster, because he's I believe he's a purple belt, maybe a brown belt. Yeah. And he's actually really good. Not many people.
He rolled with me one time before he started jiu-jitsu, and he still tells the story every day. Every time he comes this week, like, yeah, he choked me out, and then I woke back up and he did it again.
Well, did you know that it was my last year doing rec football, but Angel was actually my coach?
No way.
Really?
Yeah, because
is this something was probably playing with?
Yeah, Caleb?
Caleb.
Yeah, so Caleb was on the team with us because I was with the Pheasant Run Titans. We wore those purple, and I was like, orange? What the heck? And I didn't have a jersey on the front. He was like, well, it's going to be easy. You're the only guy that doesn't have a number. We'll know where you're at on the field. And But he was so cool back then. And whenever he started, becoming a pastor and everything, it was cool because I always saw him and a lot of people at our school because that I started teaching. So
awesome.
Started teaching English, and a lot of people at my school know Angel, and they're like, my pastor says he knows you and your brother. I was like, what did we do? I didn't do anything wrong. Like,
no, we were talking about both you guys. Yeah.
But he's such a good guy.
He is.
He's the officiant at our wedding.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah, he told me that.
I love it because we're kind of getting off on tangent on Angel, but he is awesome. He's a great speaker. He's
great communicator.
Great communicator, man.
Yes.
I love the way he speaks. I love the way he can connect anything to just real life situations, and such a knowledgeable. He's been around the block.
He makes it real for you.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And I'm like, that's what it should be about. How can I relate this to my life? And I don't have to find a way to. He does it.
Yeah.
So, but shoot.
Very cool.
Is that something that you would be interested in becoming a head pastor one day, or do you really like focusing on the youth members of the community?
I just take it one step at a time. If that's a door that God opens up for me, then I would look at that. But right now, I'm just blessed to be where I'm at, helping kids,
living in the now.
Man, and you're in a very good spot. So it's like it's cool to, hey, good message for everybody. Live in the now.
That's right.
A lot of people forget. They're always looking in the future. Like I think I'll kind of paraphrase off what you were saying. Sometimes I got like this in my career where it was, I'm looking for the big house. I'm looking for the nice car. I'm looking for all these big things. But it's like, dude, you forget to enjoy the journey, man. You live in the now and just because shoot, that's a lot of the fun. You know?
Appreciate what we have. We've got so much to be happy for. And been blessed so much.
And also just like, I love what you said. I just want to touch back on this because it just resonates with me of like, because of a person who has done so much and you can get a lot of eyes on you, it's not just about you. It's about making an impact on countless lives and using this fame or this platform maybe that to do so is it's just such a cool thing to see, man. I'm such a big fan of it. I love it. I'm like, it just touched our lives for sure. I mean, you're touching countless lives in at the church. I mean, in the MMA world. I mean, as a firefighter, I'm sure you've saved lives. I'm sure you've, just, hey, man, you want to talk about a good person in the world? Well, here's your guy.
That's the way God made me.
So now I'd regret it if I didn't at least bring it up because there's something that we talked about before, flicking on the camera. But with your influence in MMA, you helped jumpstart probably one of, if not the biggest Greeley MMA fighter or even Colorado fighter. Because, I mean, if you want to get nitpicky, like Gaethje's from Arizona. So we claim him. He lives here. He wrestled here.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Shane Carlin because I remember he popped up on my radar out of nowhere whenever I was like, who's this guy fighting Gabriel Gonzales? He's from Greeley? What the hell? Where have I been? So
he knocked him out, right?
He did. Yeah. Well, he's knocked out everybody he's fought.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, but you said he was one of your wrestlers while you were coaching at Greeley West.
My first year teaching at Greeley West, he was a junior.
Oh, okay.
So I walked into him being one of my best kids on my team,
Well, and he majored in engineering, and he
went on to Mines.
Went to Mines, Western,
right? That's where he was a national champ. Was at Western, I believe.
And he was an All-American in football too.
And he was another one of those kids that didn't reach his potential in high school, and just peaked in college, and so. We were always in contact. His family was still here in Greeley, so we always kept in contact. So when he would come back to town, I was, preparing for fights at that time. So he would come and help me train for my big fights coming up. And
such a cool guy.
And I told him right from the beginning, yeah, exactly right. Mm-hmm. And said, man, you got to give this a shot. You'd be great at this. So we trained for, I coached him. I think his first 7 fights in MMA. He fought for WEC out in California and did some smaller events went out to Hawaii with him, and he fought in F1.
And he did some Ring of Fire fights back in the day, I think. Yep. So
awesome.
So how do you get somebody like that just to say, give it a shot, and then it just goes boop, 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 boop. And like how much of that connection was in there when he finally got that shot in the UFC, and how much of it was like, hey, I just want to give a shout out to Ron. Wouldn't be here without you today, you know.
That's one of those things. You just know when people are going to be successful. I mean, it was the same way with Brock when I'm wrestling with him in WWE, and you know, like this dude is just a stud. Like he can take me down at will. I can't even stop this guy. So he would just be a dominant force in the UFC. And so we started training a little bit. And he had a bunch of good connections back in Minnesota. And
Marty
enough, yeah, Marty Morgan. Yeah,
Marty Morgan.
Trained with Marty for a while, and we wrestled at the same time in college. He was at NDSU, and I was at UNC.
Okay. All right, cool. I just want to make sure. I was like, I think
so. He was another one that's like, man, this guy's just going to dominate. And sure enough, you know, a year later, they're matched off against each other. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't be in this either corner. Like, there's no way.
But you were at the fight.
But I was at the fight, yeah.
And ringside, right?
Yeah, and they interviewed me for it. It was pretty cool.
So that was a whirlwind of emotions, like having like this personal connection with both those guys. Like, were you leaning a certain way, or were you just like, let the best man win?
Pretty much, you know. I was just like, yeah, let this play out. Yeah.
Dang, that man.
And like most fights, you know, people get a bad perception about fighters, and you know, they lean to that wrestling part of it, thinking these guys are arch enemies and hate each other. Like almost every one of my fights, I gave my opponent a big hug. I'm like, you're just like,
it's
man,
still
thanks for the opportunity, man.
It's still like,
absolutely.
hey man,
and we're super competitive, like ultra competitive. But
during the time, I want to mess you
that's
up.
right.
There's once we're done, we can have a beer. We can, it's done. So we can let it all go now. You know,
like my second UFC fight, I ended up flying home with the guy that I fought and sitting next to him on the plane on the way home. And we both had big shiners, my arms in a sling, pulling my bicep, and we were sitting next to each other the whole way, just talking. It's crazy.
I love that you say that too, because fighters do get a bad rap. They think we're just these brutes, but hey, we're people too, and we have families, we have lives outside of fighting that most people don't even get to see, man. And there's more to it. And at the end of the day, I don't hate the guy I'm fighting. I really wish him the best, whoever it is. But in that 15, 25 minutes, depending on whatever it is, however long, I'm coming to get you.
That's right. It was pretty cool last year that the UFC came and contacted me, and they put me on the Where Are They Now?
I was going to bring that up because they were... I remember I saw it. I was like, oh man, I got to get Fight Pass. I got to watch this. I still haven't seen it, but so what was that like to kind of just have them like just getting a picture of your life now? I know they went to Austin's, was it his first fight? So that was pretty cool. Yeah. So what was that like to just have them come out and be like, hey, Ron, let's see what's going on, you know?
It always feels good to, you know, to be remembered and to have an opportunity like that and just, you know, show them my life now and what I've done with it. You know, so many times you get fighters that don't go down a positive path and they go down the wrong path, and that's not what we want people to see, you know.
Of course.
It was cool for them. They followed me around for 4 days. They went with me to the fire department and sat with me for 12 hours on a fire shift, and then they had my daughter and I riding horses around our property, and then they followed me to the church and showed me at the church. So it was a picture of what my life is.
What it is now. Yeah. It's like it's funny because you go see somebody like this who blessed life, great life.
Absolutely.
And then I just saw this on X, Twitter. Sean Strickland says, Roadhouse 2 is probably the most realistic MMA movie from UFC fighter, almost champ, whatever, to broke bouncer. And I'm like, dang it.
Like, don't say that, man.
I was like, come on, man. What the heck, dude? So, but, well, shoot, man. Is there I wanted to touch base on something, too, of like that you talked about such a successful MMA career and a lot of hype. And then Austin kind of following those footsteps, having success, professional fighter. That's got to be such a cool feeling to be able to just be a part. And for the most part, you're letting him walk his own footsteps. Sure. But you do have a lot of information and guidance and just some things that you can probably input because you've done it on a really high level. So it's just interesting, man. It's how's that? I mean,
it's super rewarding to see your boys want to follow in your footsteps, and be successful. And I think one of the coolest things was one of the interviewers came up to Austin before his fight. It might have even been the UFC guys when they're out here taping him, and said, you know, your dad has this, you know, this career. Isn't it cool to kind of follow in his footsteps? And he's like, I want to make my own footsteps. And
Which
it's like,
I have personally talked to him about that.
perfect answer, because you don't need to walk in anybody's shoes.
No,
man.
it's. Go ahead. Sorry,
You make your own path, and he's such a good person, family man.
Austin is a great man, dude.
And
He's
super hard worker, and just making his own path, man. And he was 7-0 for a few years, and he had his first loss. And you know what it's like to get that first loss. You're just like, you question everything.
You really do. You really do question everything, and you're like, man, am I? You get these doubts. You get these negative thoughts, and you got a choice at that point. Like, are you gonna come back? Are you gonna? Is this what you really want to do? And you see a lot of people who they take that and they do not take it well, and then they try to jump back again, and they don't process these emotions and do it the right way, and then they lose again, and then it's kind of game over for them from that point.
Yeah,
and it's,
enemy can get in your ear fast and start to give you doubt. And man, once you let doubt take over, it's a hard fight to get back where you need to be.
And that's the hard part about MMA is like they love you one minute. Austin was probably the biggest prospect coming out of Colorado, maybe even nationally. And I mean, shit, dude, he had a tough guy who we're also friends with, which is
another fighter, another wrestler
going back to the greatly days.
Exactly.
Like,
I coached him.
I'm like, wow, isn't it just, it's so funny. It's just so interesting. But I mean, even still, I love one of these moments too. We got to coach Austin. I think it was his last amateur fight where he won the title and beat the crap out of this guy who was a tough guy. And I think he choked him out. It was an arm triangle, maybe. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But just fun experience for us to like watch Austin grow as a fighter, and just knowing him personally, it was just a good feeling for me to see him training together and have success and just be able to corner with you and crack some jokes and stuff.
So rewarding for sure.
And so this is something that, like, I think whenever you become a father and you have this past of, and it's not violence, but I'm going to use violence. Was it ever one of those things like when you said, Dad, I think I'm going to get a fight, I'm going to start training, that you were kind of like, no, I was trying to keep you away from this or some kind of thing? So was it always like, if this is what you want to do, I support you unconditionally?
I probably would support him regardless. I mean, and I know how he's so talented. Like,
oh man, very talented.
It almost is hard for me to say, don't do this, because it was like I was. You've got so much potential at it. You don't want to waste this. You don't ever want to look back at your life and say, "Man, I wish I would have given it a shot."
Yes,
and you don't.
I tell people the same thing. Like, I can live my life knowing that you wonder what if that's going to regret you the rest of your life. And
and I mean, dude, you were this close to just being a teacher, and that was what you were going to do. He was going to be a gym teacher.
I never wanted to fight, and I trained, and it just something resonated. It was like, I got to try this at least once, and at that moment, it changed my whole life.
So. And then just being open to God will take me where He wants to take me after this, and if He wants to put me back in the classroom, then man, I'll be a teacher.
I'm open to it.
Right.
I'm never shutting anything down, and it's like when the time comes, I'll know. We'll have a talk, and that's gonna be between us, and
that's right.
He'll guide me. So
man, is there anything that you're thinking like, man, you really want to bring this up, Ron, or that you're just like, you didn't ask this, and this is a really interesting story. So, but I feel like we touched our bases pretty well, and
we covered a lot of stuff, man.
Did we? We were there at your retirement fight at the Budweiser. I stepped away for a second because they're being crazy, but that was awesome for me because, like we said, growing up with Ron and seeing you just with all the success, I've always like, dang, you're the man. Just always being around. It's like I see you like multiple times a week on almost every weekend, but I was like
tournament somewhere.
Yeah. And I got to work ringside. I think I was the door and the blood cleaner, and I was like, it was just cool to be like right there next to the judges, watching people, and then getting to watch you beat the crap out of I can't remember what he tried to wear, ankle pads or something. The ankle support.
Well, for one, he weighed in like 50 pounds more than what we were
the
supposed
limit
to.
was.
Like, I was like,
I
wait a
remember,
minute.
though, like, what the heck?
We did it at 265. Isn't that what we were supposed to?
And he was not. He was like three.
Three plus.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow. But hey, made light work of him. Got your hand raised in front of the hometown crowd and right off into the sunset.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to fight in front of your home crowd. I guess as fighters, we don't get to do that very often. Especially
no,
when
absolutely.
you're on a big stage. You don't get a fight in front of the boys very much. So it was fun. Both of my boys were there ringside.
I'm sure that's something that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Like, because at the time, like you said, you were gone a lot.
I
And they
was.
were very, very young during that time. So they probably couldn't be around it as much. But I mean, I get this sentimental feeling just being a fighter as well and living this crazy life that I'm sure I look forward to being a father someday. And, I'm getting older, so they might never see me fight, but hopefully at one point I could get back and strap them up whenever kids are old enough to remember it.
That's right. I fought till I was 45, so you got a few years.
I still got a few years. That's
You got a few
45,
years.
that might be pushed.
It is a different world than it was back then. And I guess it's not like a personal topic, but it's just something that, like, I know my old lady, like, we're getting married in November, and we have to talk about kids, and she grew up with mostly sisters. I obviously had 2 older brothers, and she's like, we're going to have a girl. I was like, I don't think that's how it works. Like, I think it's just what happened, how the hands are dealt. But for you, how was it, raising 2 boys for, most of your life, and then, bam, all right, now I got this little girl. Was that like a quick shift that you were like, okay, all right, so wrestling maybe off the table, or we're like, so becoming a girl dad, how was that?
Dude,
for
it
you?
is night and day different. It's just 2 different worlds completely, And like you said, I coached my boys from the minute
Since
they could
they were
walk all the way
little
up
to
through
all the
high
way
school.
through.
Yeah, so now I have this, little prissy girl that wants to sing and be in theater, and just a different set of talents. She's riding horses, and I just love her and support her. But it's a whole different avenue. I'm glad God gave me a girl so I can experience both, because
probably taught you some lessons.
tons of life lessons.
Becoming a different person in that whole process, I would assume. I mean,
yeah. And I'm still, the super competitive guy. I mean,
yeah.
I want to lose to her in any board game we play. I'm not losing, but it's just been amazing to have a little girl at home.
Love that, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because that's something that I'm honestly like terrified of. I was like, I grew up with brothers. I
Don't know
had
how
a
to
bunch of boy cousins, and like I was on a wrestling team with nothing but dudes. And if I had a girl, I'd just be I would do my best not to be like, "What's up, bro?"
Right.
So
what do I do?
How do I do this?
yeah. So, oh my gosh. But is she had any interest in wanting to do sports? She's like strictly kind of.
She likes soccer, and I'm working on her right now to get her into some jiu-jitsu. So I think she'd be great at it. It'd be a lot of fun. And jiu-jitsu is like wrestling. It's just a great sport for any kid to get into. Just you learn so much about yourself, and
absolutely.
so many life lessons are taught on that mat. So I think it would benefit her. And lots of friends that have their kids doing it. So I think
I'm a firm believer that everybody on the planet should do some sort of martial arts.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be wrestling, even though I'm a little biased towards that. It doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu, boxing, anything, karate. I don't care what it is. I just think you learn a lot about defending yourself, but also builds your confidence, self-esteem.
There's so many life
and
lessons.
just things that you can't learn any other way.
That's right.
Because one of those things is like a lot of people that have never like been socked in the mouth before get this false sense of confidence. Not saying that we just need to go around punching each other.
Some keyboard warriors.
yeah, but
right?
It's such a fun thing because my kids asked me and it was like, how was it like fighting in the cage, with this and that. I was like, guys, it's not that much different from a wrestling match or playing a football game. But the difference is like when you get hit on the button, it's nice to know like, boom, hey, that hurt, but I'm okay. It's nice to know that you're not made of glass, but you're also not made of stone either.
It lets you know you're not invincible, but
you can change the game pretty fast.
Fragile little,
Because, and that's one of those things I think people need to understand with like just life in general, that I think if you can take a punch and get back up and go back swinging, and it can be a physical punch, real punch, or just a metaphorical one.
That's right.
You fall down and get up and know that, like, I got more stuff I need to do. And so I always liked that mentality is like, some people just need to get hit in the face one time just to know, okay, I'm not going to say mean things about other people because I don't like how that felt.
I learned my lesson.
But at the same time, like, okay, like, and if maybe you're scared to just take that step into something, it's like, hey, the punch is going to hurt, but you're going to realize, like, I can get
You can
through
recover. That's right.
So
Just being tough. Life's not always going to be easy. Life's not always going to be simple. And just getting through it is that's a big chunk of the battle. And if you do, if you get up every time you're knocked down, you're going to reach those things that you want to.
That's right.
And
Tomorrow's another day.
And off that, I think this will be maybe the last thing that I wanted to bring up, because like we always talk about like how great of a guy you are, like all the things you'll be able to accomplish, but we don't talk about like, all the road bumps and all the, the times where we go down the hill. What were those times for you that you think were like these real character building experiences that said, wow, okay, maybe I need to do some reflecting, and it kind of shaped you to be who you are today? What were those for you?
Man, there's so many of them, Vinny. I mean, I can think clear back to like not reaching my potential in high school, not reaching my potential in college, getting married early, and going through a divorce. I mean, nobody ever wishes that. I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 12 years old, and I was like, man, I'm never going to do this to my kids. Sure enough, Justin was 12 years old, and I ended up going through a divorce. And man, it's just a terrible feeling, something I wouldn't wish on anybody to have to go through. But like you said, just battling through that and knowing that God still has a plan for my life, and it's going to work. And you just try to make the best of the situation. And 5 years later, I'm remarried to a beautiful woman and have a little girl and a great job in life. And so you just have to learn to bounce off of those things, because that's what develops our character and makes us better, is going through some of the stuff that we go through. I mean, it makes us who we are. So
I agree 100%.
that's all just part of the plan, and you just make the best of that plan and try not to make the mistakes that you made in the past. And
Easier said than done.
sometimes
Easier said than done.
Right.
Well, shoot. That got me so hyped. I'm not going to lie. I'm just like, I'm ready to go. Let's go for a run now. Because I'm just, man, we're repeating ourselves, but man, Ron, we're so happy to have had you come out. I know took a minute or two to get us to get here, but we're so happy that you took the time out of your day, your busy schedule, to come sit with us. It means a lot to us. We want to thank you for everything that you've done for not just the wrestlers, not just your church, but just everyone that you've crossed paths with. You're an amazing person. We're so thankful to have you in our lives, and I'm sure everyone that will be watching this that knows you or maybe just meeting you for the first time, take what he said and run with it, because you can always do greater and better things. And it's just cool to be able to share a conversation with you a little bit more in depth, because like I said, we've known you forever.
Yeah.
We know what we know through a screen that we can look up on Google,
and the things we covered today are still just like
the tip of the
just
iceberg.
a shell. Still, I mean, there's still so much more of Ron's deepest, most personal things that he likes to do outside of all these successful achievements. But let's end it with this. Ron, I'm sure you got an Instagram. I'm sure you got several ways to follow. Man, why don't you share that with the audience? And if you guys want to give a follow and see what he's doing outside of our show, and just see his life with his daughter, see his life as a firefighter, as a pastor. And I mean, shoot, man, you want to share some of that info with the guys?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram and a Facebook. Don't have a MySpace anymore, but
Hopefully,
But-
I'm in his top 8.
right at Ron Waterman for my Instagram, and just Ron Waterman for my Facebook. And I'd love to accept you as a friend and follow each other.
Anybody out there who is interested just to see more of what Ron's life is like, give him a follow. I mean, shoot, Well, so we're going to wrap it up. We've took a lot of Ron's time and we hit a lot of things in his life that, like we said, this man's lived 1,000 lives and he has been successful in every single one of them. It's just such a cool person to have and be a part of our lives. So this is the Blood, Sweat, and Banter podcast. Thanks for tuning in. As always, guys, if you guys want to show some support, give Ron a follow. I'm sure he's pretty open to just some questions, topics, you know, being a pastor, being a firefighter, EMT, successful MMA fighter, successful WWE star, father. He has a lot of input on life. So give us a follow, give us a like. You guys want to comment? You know the deal.
Thank you, guys.
We're out.
God bless you.